Let's welcome Alan Greenblatt to the stage.
All right. Hey, everybody. Never done this before. All right. So, you know how in a lot of horror movies, there's always this one person who's almost begging to be killed. They walk into the dark room, they don't turn on the lights, they hear a noise, they're like, oh, let's go down to the scary basement and everything. So I actually really sympathize with those people because I'm one of them. 1992, I'm living in California, and a couple of my buddies, they're going on a backpacking trip, 6 months, Southeast Asia. You want to come with us? I'm like, I'm always up for a great adventure. Let's go. First stop, Fiji. We travel around, it's great, and they head off to New Zealand, our next step, and I hang out in Fiji for a little bit. I'm hanging out on this campground, and right by the beach, it's beautiful. I grab my mask and snorkel one day, I head out, and it's just like you'd expect Fiji. It's beautiful, beautiful tropical fish, coral, everything's great. And I'm swimming right by the edge of the reef, and it drops off, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, there's something weird's here. Like, where's all the fish? Where'd they all go? And I look around, and sure enough, there's a shark. And I know it's a shark because it's got that dreaded dorsal fin, that classic Jaws, anyone who's seen Jaws. Anyways, but the thing is, it's a baby shark. It's this big. You'd think I'd be all right, but I freak out. And I do everything you're not supposed to do with a shark. I'm thrashing. I'm like, wounded seal, wounded seal. And I'm like tearing to shore. I'm yelling, I'm shark, 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 and going to shore. And everyone on the beach is like, running over to meet me and everything. And by the time I get to the beach, I'm like, I'm a little embarrassed because I realize it was just this baby shark. And they're like, but they want to make sure the beach is safe. So they're like, where was it? I'm like, oh, it's just over there. And they're like, well, how big was it? And I'm like, it's just about this big, like, kind of embarrassed. And instead of like laughing at me, they're all freaked out. And one of the guys actually like runs off, and they're starting to clear the beach. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I realize, oh, the sharks here are really, really big. And so they measure them by their width, not their length. And I'm like, oh, he was like this big. So like, okay. And so they all roll, they're like, go away. And I go sit down, I'm hanging out. And eventually this guy, Francis, comes over. And Francis, he's one of the local Fijians. He runs the campground and everything. He's like, hey, Alan, we have a barbecue tomorrow, and we need to get some fish, and so we're going spearfishing tonight. And I don't know about you all, but when you're in Fiji and a local Fijian says to you, we're going spearfishing tonight, do you want to come with us? I said, sure, I'm up for an adventure, let's go. So that night, moonless, beautiful night in the South Pacific, I head out, local Fijians, bunch of motorboats, me, this Dutch couple, another American guide traveling, and we head out, motor out for a bit, and it's pitch black. We get to our spot, we drop anchor, we put some lanterns in the boat so we can find the boat when we're in the water. We drop in the water. Now the locals, they have, fins, masks, snorkel, lights, spear guns, all good. I got my mask and snorkel. I'm good, I'm floating in the water. And everything's fine for the most part, except, when someone would take a kick and they would disappear and I'd be floating in the dark. And I'm like, this isn't good. And I'm looking down, and it's gorgeous. They're free diving way down deep, and there's these long beams of light just dancing around, and everything's good, except then they start coming up, and they have fish that they've speared, fish that have been speared with blood, and there's blood in the water. But before I have time to really think about this, my buddy Francis shows up next to me, and he's all grinning like, hey, isn't this great? And, he's got his flashlight, and shining off in the distance, and I'm looking down this long beam of light, and we're just floating there, and then I see a face at the end of the beam of light, and that face has got a lot of teeth on it. And yeah, it was a shark, and this one was about this wide. And he was about 9 feet long, and he's coming straight towards us, and the mouth is open, there's teeth everywhere, and I'm like, and I'm not even scared, because I just went right past terrified and wrapped around to the beginning, and I'm like, this isn't really happening. This is a really bad movie. And I'm just like, what's going on? And the shark's coming right down this beam of light, and just before he gets to us, he's like 5 feet away. And Francis takes his flashlight and just goes whoosh off to the left, and the shark just follows the beam of light, and he just passes in front of us. And I'm like, okay, wow. And I get this tiny bit of sense, and I almost walk across the water into the boat, and I jump in, and I'm like, okay, all right, everything's good. I'm back in the boat, and I say tiny bit of sense, because then Francis, who's back in the boat, and says, hey, turns to me and Kenneth, this Dutch guy, and he goes, you guys want to go spearfishing? And I go, hey, I'm up for an adventure always. Sure, why not? And because I'm not thinking, I just saw a big shark. I'm thinking, I like that shark. I like that spear gun. So Kenneth and I, we pop in the water. I got the spear gun. He's got the light. We go off, and I actually catch a fish, tiny fish, and I feel terrible because it's too small to eat. And I'm like, I just killed a fish. I feel awful. And I'm like, okay, night's done. I'm all good. And let's go back to the boat. And there's no boat. The boat's gone. And, we're in the ocean. Like, I should be able to see the light bobbing, and there's no light. Boat's gone, and I lose it completely and entirely and start to scream and scream and scream. And Kenneth shows up. Francis shows up, and he's like, what are you guys yelling about? And we're like, well, where'd you go? Where'd the boat go? And it turns out that we had moored off the side of an island, and Kenneth and I had swam around the back side of the island, and because it was a moonless night, we couldn't even see the island. The island was blocking us from the boat, and so that's why we couldn't see it. Anyways, we made our way back to the boat. We got in the boat, and Francis turned to me, and he's like, would you like to go back to the campground? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Thank you.
Alan Greenblatt.